Okay, good evening. Tonight's a very good class, a little Kabbalistic in nature, which is very appropriate because we are celebrating. This is the 19th day of Kislev. The 19th day of Kislev is the day that the Alter Rebbe, Shnei Zalman of Liadi, was freed from prison. And this is called the New Year, the Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus. And it's celebrated all year round. In fact, after this class, I'm going to Fabringen to get inspired, charged up. It's a special day. So what we're going to do is, we're going to take this week's Parsha and say L'chaim, yeah? Okay. I'm not embarrassed to say it, Larry. I'll come straight forth, you know. I've been going to AA and I admit it, right? 1-800-ADMIT it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this week's class, one of the topics in this week's class, and infuse it with a topic of Chassidus and interpol that with what Chassidus was trying to bring to the world. Okay, so let's begin with one of the general overviews. So generally, we view the week as two sections. We have the work week and we have Shabbos. During the week, we work, and on Shabbos, we relax. So if most people who like relaxing, they say, okay, my job is to get from point A to point B. So I hate Mondays. Tuesdays is okay. Wednesday is hump day. And Thursday, they used to say in the times of the unions, only buy a car manufactured on Tuesday or Wednesday. Because they would come back from the weekend drunk and hungover, so you don't want to do it on a Monday. And then Tuesday they're there, Wednesday they're there, Thursday already thinking about the weekend, they're sloppy. Friday they're probably a little drunk already. It's only buy a car. You ever heard that before?
No, but I don't think the union members would appreciate it.
Yeah, right.
By the way, if you're going to buy a Tesla, white.
White.
That's the color they're all made in, unless you put in a special order.
There you go. When I buy a Tesla. So people who like to relax, look at the weekend as an obstacle, and it comes Shabbos, and then Shabbos is over. Ah, man, it went so quick. Where did it go? And then some people are workaholics. They can't stand Shabbos. They can't do anything. I can't do. They want to get back to the office. Alan, are you a Shabbos person or are you a workaholic? Which one are you?
Not answering.
Not answering. Okay. I think Heidi's a workaholic. All right. So actually, we're going to learn according to Chassidus.
Did you miss the cake?
No, you didn't miss the cake.
Oh, good.
We left it right in front of your chair.
Exactly. You're still here for.
Oh, great.
By the way, you still have to stay.
This chair
You still
is-
stay for the whole class. You can't just eat cake. Well, although I bought a lot of cake, so you can eat during the whole class. So.
Can we pour some rum on top of
That would be nice.
Anything. So the idea of Chassidus is we're going to try to find a balance between, and not only a balance, a fusion between the Shabbos and the work week. Okay, let's begin with the story in the parsha. One of the more disturbing stories in the Torah portion. And like I was telling someone before we get into the story, last Friday I was talking to somebody and he asked me, "What's Chassidus?" So as a Lubavitcher, I should be able to answer this question. As a shliach.
I can answer what a chassidus is.
No, not what a chassid. What?
It's a philosophy.
Okay, so what's the
It's a philosophy.
No, obviously, but what is it? So one of the things I was telling him is Chassidus gives a godly understanding to the way the world works, and also it gives a deeper understanding to what it says in the Torah. So there's many stories in the Torah that don't really make sense. Meaning, if you're reading the story and you just walk away and say, okay, then the story doesn't make sense. So, for example, God spoke to Adam and said, don't eat from the tree. Within the hour, Adam eats from the tree. That story shouldn't make sense to you. If God speaks to you, that it should have an impact, right? Maybe you don't listen to God, but later, God says to the Jewish people, don't serve idols. 40 days later, they're serving idols. Right? And there are multiple stories over here. One of the stories in this week's Parsha, Yehuda, and we know Jacob had, all 12 sons were special. But two of the most special sons were Yehuda and Yosef. Joseph and Yehuda, right? Everyone's the kingdom of Israel comes from Yehuda, right? Yehuda is the leader. So the story in this week's parsha, a lot of the stories in this week's parsha are beg you to ask the questions. Doesn't make any sense. First of all, the brothers sell Yosef in this parsha, and we're calling them righteous people. I mean, not righteous people don't sell their brothers. That's not the story we're going to speak about today, by the way. The story we're going to speak about is the story in middle of the parsha that takes place. It's sandwiched in between the story of the sale of Joseph. So after Joseph originally they were going to kill him, and then they said, no, let's not kill him. Let's make money. And they sell him, and it was Yehuda's suggestion to sell them. And then when seeing how depressed and devastated Yaakov is, Yehuda sort of takes upon himself a self-imposed exile. And he goes away from his brothers. And then what happens is, he marries a woman, the daughter of a merchant named Shua. And then he has 3 boys, Er, Oinon, and Shelah. Those are the 3 boys. And Er marries a woman named Tamar. Now, what happened is that, in the old days, and this is going to sound very anti-woman, but this is the way it was in the old days. Don't shoot the messenger, right?
It's not you, it's them.
Right, this isn't a political ad. I do not endorse this message. So in the old days, many times...
I'm not carrying tonight, so you're all right.
Thank God.
She
Thank
knows
God.
where mine is.
All right, so now I'm going to say the truth. All right, here we go. So in the old days, a lot of men had 2 wives, one for beauty and one for kids. No, I'm serious. I'm not making this up. They had 2 wives, one for beauty, and they didn't want the beautiful woman to get pregnant because they felt it would ruin the woman's pregnancy. Again, I'm just saying.
The woman's beauty.
I said the woman's beauty. Thank you. I said the woman's pregnancy. Hey, so Tamar was a very, very beautiful woman. And Er did not want his wife to get pregnant. So he took steps, and this is a child-friendly show, so he took steps to make sure she would become pregnant. Now, God, who knows what's going on, didn't like that. So he whacked him, right? He had him swimming with the fishes in the Hudson. Now, in Judaism, there's a mitzvah called, in English, it's called levirate marriage. Levirate marriage is that when a man dies with no children, either male or female, it's the mitzvah of the brother to marry the woman, his sister-in-law, and if they have a child, the child, number one, gets the name of the brother, and the child inherits his brother's portion. So now, Yehuda told his second son, Oinon, do the mitzvah, because I think we spoke about last week, remember the mitzvah, the question was, our forefathers kept the Torah even before Sinai? So Yehuda told Oinon, marry your sister-in-law, Tamar, and have a child. Now Er thought, what am I going to do that for? I'm going to have a child, so he takes, right? So he also didn't want to impregnate Tamar. God didn't like that either.
He got whacked too.
He got whacked too,
But my
right?
question is, are there still fishes in the Hudson?
Plenty. Oh, you mean like that? I don't know. Deep.
The Hudson was called the Jordan in those days.
Exactly. Right. That's why it's called the Dead Sea, right? You're dead, we throw you into the sea, right?
Well, then Jordan flows into the Dead Sea.
Exactly.
And that's how it got its name.
Exactly. All different. You know something? Maybe we're onto something over here. But don't uncover anything. You don't want to end up. Anyway, so then Yehuda tells Tamar, and he thinks to himself, she's a bad luck charm. So he tells her, Shayla's too young for you right now. Wait till he grows up, and then you'll marry her. But he has no plans of letting his son, because 3 times is the charm. Or in this case, actually, you should know, according to halacha, if a woman marries 2 men and both of them die, a man should be a little hesitant about marrying this woman, because maybe she's carrying a black widow, right?
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
Didn't Hall & Oates write a song, Man Killer?
So statistically, men die before women. There's a reason. Anyway, so years go by, and Shayla grows up, and he becomes marriageable age, and Yehuda's not calling Tamar to marry Shayla. So what happens is that Tamar realizes that Yehuda has zero intention of letting his son marry her. Okay, this is where we pick up the story in text number 1. Text number 1, many years passed, and now Yehuda's wife dies, and he's consoled, and he goes with his friends to a festive occasion. In those days, the shearing of the sheep was a festive occasion. It showed that you're bountiful, and it's sort of like an end of the year office party, but not the sin. But when you do the books and you see you're profitable, they made a party. This was the equivalent. And Tamar found out about it. And so she threw off her widow garb and covered herself in a veil. He sat down at the crossroads, and Yehuda goes over to her and thought her a prostitute because she covered her face, which tells her she was a very modest woman. And she says, "Come, let's come to me," because he didn't know it was his daughter-in-law. And she said, "What are you going to give me?" He said, "I'll give you a kid from the herd." But she says to him, "Where's the goat? Only if you give me collateral." Okay, let's stop. This is the Yehuda, right? We're called Jews, Yehudim, the Yehuda. And it's okay. He was driving by. Hey, right?
Well, his wife had passed.
Right. So Jackie Mason has this great joke. How a guy could be the smartest businessman. One beautiful woman says to him, "Don't you look good, right?" No one can outsmart him. But one chick that comes over to him and says, "Wow, you look good." Really? All of a sudden, she owns all the real estate. She has all the money, right? He has no place to put anything. We're talking about one of the greatest people in Jewish history, and that's saying something because we've had a lot of great people. The guy just turns over the side because he sees, you see the woman and he thinks it's a prostitute. I mean, the story doesn't make sense. Like I said, it's a very troubling story. So you need Chassidus and Midrash to help us understand the story. Because if you just walk away and say, "Okay," but Yehuda wasn't a regular person. If a story had happened to some other guy, fine. But Yehuda wasn't a regular person. He was the father of one of the greatest tribe, and the source of the kings of Israel. So something's got to. In fact, later on in Parshas Vayechi, Jacob, before he dies, it criticizes Reuven, criticizes Shimon, criticizes Levi, but Yehuda, he's lauding praise on him. He's the best, and he's the king, and everything else. Did you forget the story? I mean, Reuven didn't sleep with a prostitute. Shimon and Levi didn't. I mean, there's obviously something more to the story we don't know. So the Medrash actually, one answer, just an aside, Medrash says that really, God wanted Yehuda and Tamar, and we'll see why in a minute, to be together and to have children. So God put Yehuda was overcome by desire. He tried to overcome it, but that's one Medrash. God wanted him to be there. God needed this to happen. God has a plan. It has to happen, whether you like it or not. It's happening. But that's a simple answer. Let's get a little bit more complex. The Medrash tells us they actually got married. Actually, a wedding took place. Look at text number 2, right? Text number 2a. She asked him, "What are you going to give me?" And he said, "I'll give you a coat." And then she asked him, "What's the collateral?" Look at text number 2a. What does it say? 2a says, so he says, "If you give me your seal, your cloak, and your staff." So he gave it to her, and we all know the rest of the story. Now, what's your seal? What does that mean, your seal? Rashi asked this question. What's the seal? So you look over here. It says your signet ring, the ring that you use as a seal. Now, we all know that by a Jewish wedding, what does the man put in a woman's hand? A ring. So, and in fact, some sources say this is the first recorded wedding where they use a ring. You see that in text number 3. The custom is to betroth with a ring.
Yeah, but when did they give the ring?
Before. What do you when? What do you?
Okay, in the wedding.
In a wedding under the chuppah. Under the chuppah.
Oh, okay.
Gives a ring, and then right. She still remembers, not bad. And so he gives the ring, and then they make the bracha, and then the sheva brachas, and they smash the glass. But the first recorded giving a ring from a man to a woman is right here. In fact, the Tosfos, the Tosafot, the commentators in the Talmud push this idea very, very strongly. So you see, he says in text 4a, he says, some explain that the union was consecrated in marriage, and he says he said, what are you going to give me? Basically, she means, how are you going to betroth me? How are you going to marry me? She said, I'll give you a kid. Now, according to halacha, let me just back up before we finish this text. According to halacha, a man can betroth a woman with 3 ways: giving something of value, a document, or they can be together as husband and wife. Those are the 3 ways. Now, we by a wedding do all 3. We have the ring, we have the document, the ksuba, and then they're secluded in a room as husband and wife. Now, regardless of what they do, the fact that they're together as husband and wife, they show, right? They're husband and wife. But so she says to me, "What are you going to give me?" She says, "I'll give you something of value." But she said, "Okay, but until I get that something of value, that kid, the goat, I want a ring." So the Rebbe says, you see in text 4b, this is clear. Shows us that Yehuda betrothed Tamar with a signet ring, and this is the source why we give a ring by Chapter. Interesting that we have the ring comes from an interesting story, right? And the Gemara actually many times, because the Torah is very compact, the Medrash and the Gemara fill in a lot of the blanks. The Gemara tells us of a whole conversation between Yehuda and Tamar. So Yehuda went to Tamar and says, "Are you a Gentile? I mean, are you an idolater?" She says, "No, I'm not a Gentile." "Maybe you're married." She says, "I'm not married." "Maybe your father betrothed you without your knowledge." She said, "I'm an orphan." "Maybe you're impure." No, I'm pure. So it wasn't just he was overcome by lust and desire, and let's go, to the back of my Chevy. No, it was a proper conversation, and they both agreed to come to enter into the ceremony, and he gives her a ring. Want to say something?
Yeah, quick question. She's at the side of the road, she's dressed up like she's walking on South Beach or something, but that doesn't make her, the clothes don't make her a prostitute.
Being a prostitute makes her a prostitute. Yeah, so
Was
actually,
she a prostitute?
no, she wasn't.
She wasn't.
So later in the story, when Yehuda sends, so after the event with Yehuda, she leaves. She only sat there before Yehuda came and left after Yehuda went on his way. So Yehuda sends the goat, the payer, with his friend, and the guy comes back and says, "I didn't see her. In fact, I asked around," and he said, "What are you talking about? There's no prostitute at this now."
No prostitute on this corner.
Right. What you got to do is you got to go to 42nd Street. Right? That's the.
That's the
Anyone watching this won't know what I'm talking about. But
Look up Miracle on 42nd Street. It's a different story.
different story.
so according to Medrash tells us. So according to the Medrash tells us that we're going to get into this in Kabbalah, she understood that she and Yehuda have to be together. So the Malbim is a modern commentary, says something very interesting. The way the Yibum works, levirate marriage works, is that either the brother or the sister-in-law have the right to refuse. And then they do a ceremony called chalitza. You ever heard of it before?
Yep.
Chalitza, she takes off his shoe.
Right.
Not that story. No, takes off a shoe
Yes,
and
put it on
then
a
spits right, chalitza shoe, and she spits in front of him, and she says, "You are going to be called the man who doesn't want to build his brother's house." It's a ceremony called chalitza. These days, by the way, we don't practice yibum. Yibum hasn't been practiced for over 1,000 years. These days, if it happens, and it's pretty rare that a man and a woman, if they don't have children, and then the brother dies, whatever it is. There actually was a story. There was a yibum, a levirate marriage, a chalitza, done in Israel, like not too long ago. and they both were pretty old. The brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they lived together. They didn't have children. The brother died first, and the other brother had to do chalitza. I mean, it's really done. It's very really done. But he has the right of the first right of refusal. Now, if he refuses to marry her, she can marry anyone she wants. Now, Shelah was afraid to marry her. Now, no one knows. We know why, because the Medrash and Kabbalah tells us why they died. But Shelah and Yehuda didn't know why Aaron and Einan died. So Shelah, the youngest brother, was afraid to marry her. So he refused. So once he refused, Yehuda was allowed to marry her. She was open to any man. So now, but okay, Yehuda wasn't with a prostitute. He gave her a ring. It was a nice, very cheap wedding. No guests, right? No band, no flowers, no guests, no caterer. All it cost him was a goat. Yeah. Right? One kid, exactly. Cheapest wedding ever in history. So, but the fact that we do the ring today means the ring has very special significance. Where did Yehuda get that idea from? Meaning, we don't do it to remember Yehuda and Tamar. Let me tell you a story. When your granddaddy was walking down the road one day, and because of that, I mean, there's a reason why we do it, because Yehuda did it, and he understood it was the right thing and the correct thing. It was a spiritual thing, and it was a very powerful thing to do. So how did he know? I mean, where did he get that from, and why we do it? Okay, and we're going to discover a very deep lesson about marriage, and we're going to bring it back around to the we're speaking about before about Shabbos and the week. Is all gonna, and then I have a very nice story about a ring, totally unrelated. Okay, ready? If you have any questions, please ask and interrupt.
Interrupt? We don't do that.
No.
Never.
No.
You might heckle a little bit, but
It's not interrupting, exactly. Okay.
Usually just on Shabbos.
So before we get into the whole mystical, spiritual thing about a ring, let's understand, by the way, the dynamic, the impact of what's going on over here. King David is not the only special thing that's coming out of Yehuda. That's the beginning of an idea. It says, when we say every day in davening, we say it on Shabbos, we say Shabbos a lot. Mashiach is from the tribe of David. So since we're getting into the Gentile holiday season, one of the strongest arguments against their guy is they say he had no father, and Mashiach has to be from the tribe of Yehuda. Tribal descent goes by the father. Right? Judaism by the mother, tribal descent. So sorry, your guy doesn't qualify. Right? That's the easiest. Apparently, they don't have basic knowledge of halacha.
They trace on the mother's side.
Right.
That's their way around. It's still flawed, but it's their
You
way.
can do whatever you want, but the Torah clearly says in the book of Numbers, based on the father. If you want to do whatever you want, you're welcome to.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back. So many times we could look at the story as an isolated story, but everything in the Torah is macro. So this is actually the beginning, the seminal beginning of Mashiach. Mashiach comes from Yehuda and Tamar, and in Tamar was conceived when she was with Yehuda. She gave birth to twins, and she had two kids, two boys. One was named Zarach, and one was named Peretz. Look at text 5a. Oh, I'm behind here. Oh, here we go. So it says when she came time to give birth, there were twins in her womb, and one stuck his hand out, and she put a string around his hand. Then came the other brothers, and then the Peretz. Peretz means to break through. And then the second brother came with the scarlet thread and called him Zarach. Now, this Peretz is the father of the line of King David and of Mashiach. Now, what interesting name, Peretz. Peretz means to break out. What's Mashiach? Let's get into a conversation for a couple of seconds. What Mashiach is. We have become accustomed, and through no fault of our own, this is the way we see the world work, right? Certain things are important, right? That you have the bad guys are beneficial, and sometimes they have good, and sometimes the good guys come out on top. But it's a struggle between good and between bad, and things that are not really important, we place too much importance on. The times of Mashiach, what's really going to happen is my kids sometimes when we talk about Mashiach, they say, I don't know if I want Mashiach to come. Why? Because then we're going to learn the whole day. We're not going to play sports. We're not going to eat candy. Doesn't seem like
It doesn't seem like a fun time.
That doesn't seem like a fun time. But why? Because we are stuck in the reality the way we see it now. But what if I told you that you had clarity of vision, that what's truly important, and you focus on that. So there's a story in the Gemara of the son of a rabbi. His name was Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and his son his name was Rabbi Yosef. He became very sick, and when he came back, he told his father, said, I had a vision. So he said, what is vision? He said, I saw my soul ascending up, but in the world I saw, so everything was upside down. Everything that's important here is unimportant there, and everything that's important there is unimportant here. So his father told him, you didn't see an upside down world, you saw a world of clarity. So Mashiach is called a breacher or an interrupter, because what he's going to do is he's going to interrupt, he's going to change the dynamic, he's going to change the status quo, he's going to change the way we see things. So why do we, let's say, put focus on sports or fill in the blank movie or whatever it is? Because we are mistakenly putting up importance to something that really is. Let's take a silly example, right? A kid calls. You want to go to the calls his dad. You want to go to the baseball game with me? Oh no, I got to work. Or maybe it really has to work. Oh, I got to work late in the office, right? What's important here? Spend time with your kid. No, you can tomorrow night. You can spend. You can go. I'm giving just a generic example. And many times we make the mistake and we put the focus on the importance when things are really. What's that saying? You step over a dollar to get a nickel. What is that saying? There's a saying. Step over a 1 to get a 20. Come on, there's a saying like that.
I think you're making it up because I've never heard it.
Okay,
I don't know what neighborhood he grew up in, but if I see money in the street, I don't care whether it's a penny or a dollar. It's mine.
Yeah. You remember those guys who walk with a magnetic cane? So this way, they'd be able to pick it, right? Yeah.
Problem is,
One-
copper is not.
One very snowy day
Neither is silver.
that the other people celebrated the birthday of their
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
I was going through downtown Boston. Nobody was there. It was snowy, and I had to make a service call. You know what I saw floating across the street?
A $20 bill.
Who?
$20 bills.
You
Up
stop.
to you.
It was a good day for you.
Exactly.
Great day for me.
And then you went out for Chinese because it's the only place that was open.
I got news for you. In downtown Boston, nothing was open.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, I had a pound on the door to get into the building.
Yeah, I'm sure. So the times of Mashiach is going to represent a total transformation of what we call nature, but not because anything's going to inherently change. So let's say, for example, a child, when he's a kid, he focuses on candy or or toys or games, and when you're an adult, you focus on things that are more important: education, culture, whatever it is. Why? What changed? No chip was implanted in your brain. Your awareness changed. You realize what you become to grow. So I'm not going to sit there and play with toys. I could be a lot more productive with my time. My time is a lot more valuable. So Mashiach, we're not going to grow wings, and it's not going. We're not good. There's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change in the natural order of things. Actually, Maimonides is adamant about this. The world is going to retain its natural order. What's going to change is our focus, is our attention. And who's going to be that? Who's going to be the interrupter? Who's going to be the one who's going to do that? That's going to be Mashiach. So the perfect name for the father of the interrupter, the disruptor, is Peretz. Comprende?
Yeah, but I have another thought. Everything's going to stay the same. Does that mean that people will continue to work on farms so that we still have food to eat?
Yes.
Will we have other businesses?
Are you worried about your job?
A little bit.
So, I mean, this is a
I
little
can't
bit,
afford to retire.
this is a little bit beyond the scope of the class.
Money won't be necessary.
Because it's all going to be free.
No, it's not going to be free. It's going to be done on credit, but you get credit for all the good deeds you do.
So-
Every mitzvah is credit.
So the rabbis do talk about, there is a whole discussion, by the way. I said Maimonides. There is a disagreement. People disagree with Maimonides that say the world to come will be naturally unnatural, meaning the world will still have to eat, so to speak, and the world will start to plant, but the bounty we'll get, we'll have to work less because we'll get a lot more product for our effort. So we'll be able to dedicate a lot more time towards education and learning and all that. So, you know,
Okay.
so I mean, but some people say it'll go in stages, like the Rambam says. We don't know. We know kind of what's going to happen, but we don't know when it's going to happen or what stages. I'm just going to have to wait and see. All we know is that Mashiach's going to come and he's going to make the world a peaceful place. Why? Not because he's going to, you know, everyone's going to be wearing togas and halos and all that, but the focus is going to be on what's truly important, right? So I'm not going to fight you for, you know, your tires or your hubcaps or whatever it is, because it's silly. It's infantile, right? I tell kids, don't fight over. It's gonna be minuscule and puny. And okay, ready, guys? Let's get Kabbalistic a little bit. Actually, a lot of it. And I hope I do this part justice. Okay, so because what Chassidus is we're taking Kabbalistic concepts and bringing it down so we could understand it and implement it. So I hope I do a good job. So in Chassidus, a lot of things, Kabbalah, I should say, and as explained in Chassidus, a lot of things are represented in the male-female dynamic. Male is the giver, female is the receiver. Male likes to withdraw into himself, females like to give, like to express. So there's the godly energy. So there's the godly energy, the way it sees godliness, sort of withdrawn in and of itself, and in that way the world is sort of insignificant, and therefore it's sort of supernatural. We'll call that the male, okay? And then we have the godly energy, the way godliness is vested and clothed in the world. Everything is animated by God. So you relate to God the way God creates the world. Does that make sense? So you have the natural order, which is called Malchus. Malchus means king, and the reason why it's called king is because the word king necessitates subjects. You can't have a king without subjects. If a guy is by himself, he's not a king. He could be the ruler of vast amounts of land, but if there are no subjects, no one to relate to him, then he's not king. You can't be a parent without children, which I'm laughing because someone actually posted a video that he identifies as a parent or something like that, or some ridiculous thing. I wish I was making this up, you know. So
What was he, a teacher?
I don't know. So some guy's making a video making fun of him. You can identify. You cannot be a parent if you're not a parent. I mean, it's just the way it is. Anyway, so in Kabbalistic terms, it's what's called Zah. Zah is an acronym for God expressing himself sort of to himself, relating only to himself. And that way the world is insignificant. Now obviously God creates the world. So God is the giver and the world is the receiver. But there's two ways to think about it. There's the way that the world is insignificant and God's supernatural and everything else. Then there's the way God interacts with the world, the natural way. Does that make sense? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the goal, right? The goal is to try to fuse, to bridge these two realities, These two visions. That means the supernatural understanding and knowledge of God into our natural world. So, meaning we need to unite God with His kingdom. We need to unite the supernatural, but bring godliness into the world. Am I doing a? Does that make sense?
Are you repeating yourself? Yes.
I'm trying to make sure it's understood. Trying to make sure it's understood. Right.
As best we can.
Yeah. So so let's take it. Let me say it in another way. We look at the world, right? And you see trees and everything else, and you say, okay. Then you think to yourself, oh, there has to be a creator for that tree. That's relating to God through nature, right? But then you think about God, not as He created the tree. He's God. He's above it, right? So many times people can make either two mistakes. Either they'll only relate to nature, what they see is concrete, or that God's lofty and He doesn't care about the little minutiae of daily life. The idea is to bring both together. Okay, so the previous Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, says in a Maimer, in text, there's a parallel, truly godly reality that is unbound by the mores of nature. It is from this supernatural world that all morality, purpose, and spirituality stem. Okay, that's above. All right, and now our job is like this. It says a groom is called a king, and a bride is called a queen. And the sphere of Malchus is the receiver. Malchus is the expressor, right? Because again, you can't have a king, you can't have a king without a subject. That's called Malchus. So a king without a queen is not a king, nor is he great. It's because there has to be a union between masculine and feminine. There has to be a balance of the two. And it says in the Torah when God created mankind, again, everything in the Torah, it's not just a story. It's not a story. What it really is a clue into the inner workings of the world. So when it says in the Torah, He created male and female and He blessed them. So what we're really trying to do is to fuse these two consciousness to awareness, these two realities of the male-centric reality. So think about it this way. Men and women. If you ever read the book "Man from Mars, Woman from Venus," you ever read this book? Yes, no?
Yeah, I heard of the book. I didn't read it.
Did not read it.
Okay, so
Why would I read a book that was written by two people who have been divorced multiple times?
it was written by two people. John Gray, right? Who wrote the book?
Yeah, he wrote it with his wife.
Oh, did he?
I think so.
His ex-wife.
His now ex-wife. Yes, and they've both been married multiple times.
You
by
should
the time
know.
they've
You should know, by the way, general rule that the therapists' lives are always the most messed up.
That's why they go into
I
therapy.
know there's a couple I know. I'm not gonna say who, whatever. Obviously, I'm gonna give titles, right? That they're both divorced and everything's in shambles, but they're a life coach. Thank you.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Because they've screwed up. They know.
But
Yeah.
do they have a business together?
Anyway, so in this book, he says, interestingly, that men and women are very different. Men, we like to withdraw into ourselves, right? Come home, we want quiet, just to sit there and, what are you thinking about? Like Jerry Seinfeld's joke, what are you thinking about? Nothing. Just sitting there, thinking about, right?
Somebody was talking about two guys getting together to throw a ball back and forth. There's no conversation.
Right. Right.
It was a good day.
So men,
And they get paid.
the male characteristic is we like to withdraw into ourselves. The woman characteristic is we like to express. Women have to talk. So what happens is a man will come home from work, for example, and the wife wants to talk, but he doesn't want to talk, right? So this is a whole balance. But this is the way it is. Men like to withdraw into themselves. Women, by nature, are givers and expressors. So the idea is to balance the two. So let's take for example, the creation of a child, right? We all know, even medically now. I mean, I speak to doctors, and they tell me that scientifically, the best thing to do is have a C-section, right? Because imagine he tells me, one doctor once gave me this example. Imagine, for example, you have to get from room A to room C, and you have to go through room B. And room B is totally dark, obstacles. You have no idea. I mean, you might get through it okay, but you might not. So wouldn't it make more sense to cut a hole in the wall of room A and spring into room C with his light and light? Right? So I mean, no matter how much the best doctors, everyone knows that childbirth is a miracle, right? And every time a child is born, I would tell a story. My brother's brother-in-law said, that happened to my brother's brother-in-law. So when he had his first kid, my brother went to visit by the hospital. He's sitting there outside. This is my brother's brother-in-law smoking a cigarette. He's like, that's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, right.
It's like, I mean, it's very stressful, right? I mean, it's very stressful.
I wouldn't know.
Right? It's like it's very stressful, and it's a miracle. Everyone knows it's a miracle. Whether you use the words miracle, everyone intuitively knows that there's the X chromosome and the Y chromosome, but there's something more to it. The Gemara actually says that the three partners in creation. There's the man and the woman, and then then there's God, because the creation of a child is actually the perfect balance of this combination of natural and supernatural. You have the X and Y, that's the natural part. Then you have the God coming in here and instilling the soul and making sure the baby is born okay. So, and actually, by the way, you can sort of see it, right? The natural and the supernatural. So a man contributes what? A man contributes seed. You look at it, that's nothing there. Nothing there. It doesn't. You can put it under a microscope. There's no baby there. So that represents the supernatural. What?
It's just the cell.
Just the cell. It's the woman who represents the natural order of things, takes the idea and develops it and expands upon it, and then you have a baby. This is the perfect balance of the supernatural and the natural coming together. Okay, let's get to the ring. Now, like Larry said earlier, when a man marries a woman, he says, "Arei at mekudeshes li," you are hereby betrothed to me, b'tabas zoi, with this ring. If you look at back to page 159 in text 2a, you'll notice that the word tabas is not in the verse. She doesn't use the word tabas, ring. She uses the word signet, chesemcha. You see that? And she said, your seal, your cloak, and the staff in your hand. 2a, you see that? Mm-hmm. Why doesn't she use the word tabas? Tabas is the regular line, is a regular word for ring. So here we get to the Kabbalistic part. A ring is round, right? Round represents a cycle of life, right? Everything going over. It's nature. Just sun rises in the east, sets in the west. It's going on. The signet ring represents to. Why do you have a signet ring? Actually, why does she want a signet ring, by the way? Why signet ring? Why not any ring? Because later
the signet ring has his initial line or something.
Exactly. So it could authenticate, personalize. It can authenticate. This is like because in the end of the story, by the way, right? Remember, he doesn't know it was her, right? So they said, oh, she went and got pregnant. She's sleeping around. So he said, the punishment is she has to get killed because you can't. And she says to him, you recognize this ring? And by the way, we learn another important lesson aside. We learn here that you're not allowed to embarrass someone in public. She could have said, hey, you were the one that impregnated me. She said to the person that impregnated me, this is who the signet ring belongs to. And Yehuda, this makes Yehuda special, by the way. It's his willingness to admit his mistakes. In front of everybody, he says, it's me. But to a point of the signet ring is to authenticate, it's to personalize, right? So it's interesting that word emes is truth, is called the seal of God. Like in text 7, the Gemara says, it says the word emes is is this seal of a God. Why? Because what's emes? Emes is true. In true means in the Torah, the reason why God is true, because true means it is this way, it was this way, it'll always be this way. If it's subject to change, it's not true. That's the way it is. So truth is authentication, is identifier with God. So you have a matbeya is a ring, which represents nature. A choisem is a signet. It's the higher nature. Signet ring. You put these two together, you have a unification of the energies of Zah, the supernatural, and Malchus, the natural. It's interesting, by the way, the name of God that we're not allowed to say. We read, Adonai, but really it says something else. That word, the Yud and the Hey, the Vav and the Hey, are actually a collaboration of three words together. Haya, Haya, V'yeh. He was, he is, and will always be. That's the fact that God is always. Just putting out. It's text 8a and to here. Ultimate truth can only stem from God. It was unchanged and unbound by nature. Okay, so now we can understand why Yehuda gave a signet ring. Right? Okay, now let's bring it into our lives. Ready? Shabbos. Work life, and Shabbos. And we'll tie it into parrots and everything else. So there's an interesting Gemara in Medrash in text number 9. I'm behind in my text over here. Oh, here I am. There's an interesting Medrash that says, Rabbi Sheila said to Rabbi Shmuel, text number 9, 166. Have you heard from your father what on the seventh day, what it says on the seventh day God finished, what that means? So he gives two examples. One is a king makes a wedding, canopy and a beautiful paneling. What's missing? The bride. So same thing, Hashem created the world. What was missing? Shabbos. The rabbis give another analogy. The king has formed a ring. What's missing? The seal. This way, what's missing? What was the world missing? Shabbos. So going back to what we said before. In the beginning of the class, we said many people look at the week as two sections. You have the work week and Shabbos. So it says God stopped working right before. What now?
No,
Now
day
you're retired. Yeah, every day Shabbos for you.
No, every day in Shul you say this is the first day of Shabbos.
Oh, that's true. Why? But that's for help to help us have the right perspective. Most people don't have that perspective. So God worked until the moment before Shabbos, right at until the moment. We don't know we don't have an atomic clock exactly. So why did God do that? Because ideas like this. So you have a whole wedding, right? So what's missing? The bride. Oh, okay, let's add her. No, the bride is not added to the wedding. The bride is the wedding. Shabbos isn't an addition. It's not like God said, listen, I know you guys are working very hard, so I'll give you a day off. That's not what it is. Shabbos is not an addition to the week. Shabbos is a completion. Or actually, this way, it's really the beginning of the week. That's what we say. The first day from Shabbos. The Gemara says all the days of the week are blessed from the preceding Shabbos. So during the 6 days we work. We'll call that nature. On the seventh day we stop. That's supernatural. That's higher. So many times we have this dichotomized view. When I'm involved in nature, don't bother to be with God. When I'm involved with Shabbos, I don't work. That's not true. Shabbos. So first of all, Shabbos helps us realize what's truly important. Because we get you're so bogged down in nature, when you're overloaded with all responsibilities, you forget what's truly important. So as the Sefer HaChinuch says in text number 10, what Shabbos does is to help us keep focused on what's, as a reminder that the world is not as mundane as it seems. We get too cold. That's the way it has to be. No, right? I tell people all the time, the same God that created the world and feeds 8 billion people in the world can handle your extra $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000. Don't worry, it won't break God's bank. but we get very locked into the natural order of things. Because Shabbos comes to tell us in text number 10, the mitzvah of this, the message of this mitzvah, behaving in this way, the rest of rest on Shabbos is meant to awaken an awareness of the greatness of the day, and instills in our heart a belief in the creation of the world. Why do we say? Why do we keep Shabbos? Because God kept Shabbos. We're resting on the seventh day. We remember the creation of the world. But when we sit back on Sunday, people ask us, "What inspired you to rest? Why did you take off work? Are you tired?" No, I'm tired every day. Right? I did it because God. So God commanded me. So it helps strengthen our faith. Kabbalah takes it even further. So our problem many times is, right, we look at natural and supernatural as two different things. Remember, we said before, our job is to fuse the two, and this is what Chassidus came. This is what Yitzchak Kislev is about. This is what Chassidus came to implement. We look at our mundane activities, eating, working, as just that, just eating, just working, and then when I daven, then I'm davening. There's a story with Levi Yitzchak Berditchev. One day he comes out of shul with one of his students, and there's a guy in talis and tefillin, and he's greasing the wheels of his wagon. So the student says to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and says, "What a bum! What a bum!" In talis and tefillin, he's greasing the wheel. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev says, "What are you talking about? Can you imagine? Even while greasing the wheel, he's thinking about God." It's not just a cute story. Chassidus was trying to help us is that when you eat, when you are involved in the mundane activity, but you do it with the purpose of being productive, for the reason why Hashem said to, so you eat to serve Hashem, right? You work so you can support your family and send your kids to Jewish school, and you buy kosher food and give tzedakah and whatever it is, and be able to buy a lulav and esrog and matzah and all that. That infuses godliness supernaturally. Invented a word, right? Into natural. That's what that is. So where's that framework? Shabbos. So going back to what Larry said, in Hebrew, there's no Sunday, there's no Monday, there's no Tuesday. There's Rishon from Shabbos, the first day from Shabbos. The idea is to take the concept of Shabbos, the supernatural, and to infuse it into our natural life, or to use Kabbalistic terms, to bring Zah, the male supernatural, and unite it with Malchus, the natural. So this is going back into the ring, right? The ring, a regular ring, is nature. Signet ring is put it together. It's supernatural. It's interesting. What is Shabbos called? Shabbos is called the Shabbos bride. Right? On Friday night, what do we sing? L'chadoidi. L'chadoidi l'kaskala. Go, come my beloved. They would go out into the field. They would go out into the field. That's the wrong way. My way is the right way. It says they would go out into the field and they would sing, "Come, my beloved, greet the bride. Countenance of the Shabbos we shall receive." So on Shabbos, the entire world is elevated to a higher plane of consciousness. Now, that consciousness is there. The question is, you have to tap into it. So if you don't see the specialty of Shabbos, then that's, it's almost like saying, because I can't see radio waves, it's not there. It's there. You just can't perceive it. So there's a story. So, his name was No, I'm getting confused. He went to visit a chassid. Went to visit a rabbi, a great tzaddik. And he was sitting there, and he would smoke a pipe. In the 1800s, everybody smoked. Everybody. I mean, you have to realize only until the 1930s and 40s was smoking bad for you. Before that, smoking was good for you. Smoking was stylish. But everybody smoked a pipe. So he's sitting there and he's talking to him, and here it was late on Friday. I mean, it was really late on Friday. And the guy is sitting there smoking. What? Puffing away. The guy's thinking it's getting close to Shabbos. He tells the story, and all of a sudden, the guy put down his pipe. He said, and his words is, "I remained down here," and he went. He was a tzaddik, and he felt the holiness of Shabbos. So he felt it, and so. But that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to take the reality of Shabbos. So when you witness something, right? When you witness you hear about a birth of a baby or some other event, and you say, "Oh, okay." Someone comes over to you, "Oh, I had a grandkid," and you're like, "Oh, okay." What do you mean? No, wow, it has to affect you. So when you tap into this energy, it affects you. Let's look what the Rebbe says. So say again. So the kala and the Shabbos is not an addition to the week, right? The sign is not an addition to the ring. It is the ring. The Rebbe says, text number 12a. He says, a seal is not an independent entity, rather a component of the ring. Thus, with Yehuda, for example, the seal simply proved that the ring belonged to Yehuda. So it is with Shabbos. It's not separate from the week. Rather, it's a seventh day of the 6 days. It brings completion to the world. And this means that the perfection of nature itself is achieved by drawing the supernatural to it. So when you keep Shabbos, when you turn off the phones, when you put it all away, it brings meaning to the rest of the week. It's not only that, oh, I'm refreshed and now I'll be able to face another week. No, your whole week's a different week because of Shabbos. And this is what it's really about. So our job is to elevate our mundane life. That's what Chassidus helps us do. It helps us elevate our mundane life. So interesting. The Rebbe points out that by a wedding we're only allowed to use a plain ring. Right? Why? Because in the beginning stages, the bond between a husband and wife, they stay for many years, even though they go ups and downs. That has a level of supernatural to it, right? I once heard a rabbi say, ask an older couple, why do you love each other? They don't even remember, right? But they've been so long together, it's just the way it is. But at the beginning, it's sort of natural, and then they grow. Okay, so key points. Story of Yehuda and Tamar isn't, and like all stories in the Torah, we said, isn't what the direct reading of the Torah indicates. There's a lot more to meets the eye. Yehuda marries Tamar. In fact, a source for the notion is the fact that he gave her a ring. This is the first wedding ring in history that we know of. Marriage is a union of male and female. In Kabbalistic language, the male is the supernatural, the female is the natural, and is the union of the two. The miracle of childbirth is the physical manifestation because everything in the world is the mirror image. There's a spiritual reality and the physical reality. Those aren't different. They're just two ways of looking at it. There's God perspective and the human perspective. The signet ring encapsulates this impossible bridging. The ring, which is synonymous with nature because it goes round and round, and the signet, which is associated with the absolute truth of God, identifies God. Shabbos is also a signet ring. Because the implication of the transcendence of Shabbos, we cease from doing anything material and physical and mundane, but that we have to take that energy and spill it into the week. So, by the way, this also in the beginning of the day. When you start off the day with davening, with man, with tefillin, woman just davening, that's the way you start off the day. Then your day's a different day. And anyone knows that if you start off the day davening, your day's a different day. You daven later in the day, it's not the same. You start off and you direct your time to something greater than yourself. The day is a different day. So throughout the Jewish year, we have the little minuscule one, the daily davening. Then you have Shabbos. Then you have Rosh Chodesh. And then you have the holidays, which are the job is to infuse the supernatural into the natural. And one of the greatest signs of that is the upcoming holiday of Hanukkah. The physical oil stayed lit for 8 days, which is a sign to the Jewish people and to the nations of the world that the Jewish people they straddle this natural and supernatural at once altogether. Any questions? Yay? Nay? Good? Alan, how did I do?
Good job.
Make sense?
Absolutely.
All right. I was afraid that it wouldn't come through clear. I'd be on the dark side of the moon. All right, guys. Have a good week.
There is no dark side of the moon. It's the unseen side.
On side, all right. And have a happy
They're
Hanukkah.
seeing it because they go around to the other side.
And what do we have? We have the